Okay, the two things that I usually like to look at first in the program, because they're just a simple, easy way for people to start, the brush tool and colour selection. Just because we're sort of used to painting and drawing, and it's arguably the brush tool is one of the simplest tools in the program to use. So you'll find the brush tool down in the side panel here. Here it is here, it looks like a little brush. While I'm here, be aware that if I click and hold the mouse button down on some of these tools, I get a little fly out menu, so you can see I've got a brush tool, there's also a pencil tool there and a couple of others that we'll look at. And any tool that has a little black arrow in the corner, any of these tools, if I click and hold the mouse button down, I get the other tools coming out. So anyway, the brush tool. And we looked briefly in the last video at the options for the brush tool. I'm just going to pick a sort of a standard brush to demonstrate first. So we've got standard line, and then if I click on this arrow I can change the size as we've seen. I can control the hardness of many of my brushes, so I slide this up and down to control how hard or soft I want the brush. So this is the same size brush with hardness set to 0, so you can see the result is a sort of a fuzzy edged brush. And then down here we've got some more unusual brushes. I'll just shrink this one down. Okay, so there's a sort of a textured brush. So this isn't for everyone, but it is a good place to start. I'll just show you quickly what can be achieved with the brush tool, a technique we call digital painting. So this is a painting done of my son. It's done in the computer, so although we're using a digital format, you can see we're sort of mimicking traditional style of painting, a sort of a almost like an acrylic painting or something like that. We've got another one here. So similar thing, we've got a sort of science fiction scene, but the majority of this is actually painted with the brush tool in the computer. And while we're here, I just want to show you, if you haven't seen one of these before, hopefully you can see that in the camera. This is what we call a Wacom Tablet. And you can see as I hover the pen just above the surface of this tablet, the cursor moves around on the screen, and when I press the pen down on the tablet we create lines. And I just want to demonstrate a few techniques with this tablet. In my list of brushes, you'll see here there's two brushes here that have a size 19, there's two brushes that have a size 13, so they look identical. If you don't see these in your copy of Photoshop, just click on the little arrow here and choose the small thumbnail option. If you see something like this when you load the program, you get to just the dots through the small thumbnail, the thumbnail view option. Okay, so two size 19 brushes, what are they for? If I pick this one and hover the mouse over the screen, sorry, working backwards here, the harder I press on the tablet, the thicker this line gets. Okay, so if I press softly I get a thin line, if I press down harder I get a thick line. So that's the first one. The second size 19 brush, if I grab that, now when I press softly on the screen I get a pale sort of a line, and the harder I press the more opaque the paint becomes. So while you're doing this sort of work, I'll just load this other one back up. You can see there's times like the strokes of someone's hair sort of get thinner towards the tips, so you'd want to use the first brush, the one that the size is controlled by the pressure, and then you get things like this fading behind the aeroplane here sort of softens off as the paint goes along, and for that we use the second brush. So as I say, this is one of a whole range of things that we use Photoshop for. I just like to cover this first, partly because it's an interest of mine, but also because I think it's a really good introduction to the program. Okay, so if you want to have a look at getting one of these tablets, most graphic design, most computer stores can order them in. If you want to look up what they are, it's called a Wacom Tablet. The website for them is www.wacom.com, and the one I personally recommend, as I say, it's something for you to explore yourself, but there's two brands. One's called an Intuos and one's called a Bamboo. The Bamboo is the cheaper of the two. The Intuos is the one that I like to use myself, and they come in different sizes. I find the smallest size really works fine with the Intuos. The Bamboo, you probably get the sort of a medium-sized one, but it depends on your budget as well. So anyway, that's something, we'll probably look at this again at some point in time, but I just wanted to show you what options you've got there. Okay. So that's the brush tool. The other thing is colour selection. So I'm painting at the moment with a red brush. If I want to change the colour of what I'm painting, I can choose there's a colour palette up in the corner. The method I personally use, because I find I get a little bit more control, is to click on this swatch down here at the bottom of my tools. So if I click on that, this window comes up where I can pick pretty much any colour that the computer is capable of displaying. You can find in this colour picker. And there's various methods. If I click through these buttons, you see that the window changes here. Various ways in which you can find the colour that you want. This one's luminous something and brightness. This is hue, saturation and brightness. I could be wrong here. Red, green and blue, mixing colours through a red channel, a green channel or a blue channel. The one I use is just the default, the hue selection, and it's a two-step process. So first, what I need to do is slide this bar to the hue that I want. So say I want a blue. So that's the first thing. Second thing is to look in this panel for what type of blue do I want. Do I want a grey sort of blue, dark or light? And find it there, and you can see the colour as I pick them. The new colour shows up here. Let's just grab a blue and go and paint with that. So that's a fairly simple process, I think. You'll notice there's two colour swatches in the bottom of the tools here. Photoshop lets us use two different colours at times throughout the program. So here I've got a blue and a green. I wasn't going to go over too many tools, but just to demonstrate why we have two colours here, I'm going to use this tool called the gradient tool, which lets me fade a colour across the screen. So what I'm doing here is fading what we call my foreground colour into my background colour, fading the blue into the green. So anyway, you might want to explore the brush tool yourself. A couple of things I didn't mention, the opacity and flow. So the opacity, let's get a black brush here. The opacity controls just the overall opacity or transparency of my paint. So if I bring the opacity down, you can see I'm fading this colour out. Now to set my opacity, the quickest way is actually to click and hold the mouse button down on the word here, word opacity, and drag the mouse left and right. So by holding down my mouse button, I can control that. Otherwise, I can type in a value here. I can say I want an opacity of 80%, or I can click this little down arrow, and I've got a slider to do it. But as I say, the quickest way is just to click and drag on the number there. The flow is the rate at which the paint flows off my brush. So by slowing my flow right down, the paint is taking longer to come off my brush onto the canvas, and you can see the result as we sort of see more of a rough line coming across Once again, something we'll look at a little bit more later down the track.